you doing today?
Good. I'm doing very well. Thanks, Victoria.
Yeah, so just to start really quickly, would you mind introducing what you majored in at Williams and what you did first after college?
Yes, absolutely. So I was an Asian studies major. And so that meant for me, I spent my junior year in Kyoto on the AKP program. I think that still exists.
Yeah.
So when I was looking for work at the time, I was probably even less sophisticated or aware of what the options were, what I was able to do, maybe than current grads, but certainly an Asian studies major. Wasn't really trained to do anything, and so I went through the whole search process. And essentially, what I ended up with was ended up getting a job with a Japanese company. And so that was really really fortuitous for me. It was about the only thing that I maybe had going for me is I spoke passable Japanese, which they somehow thought that was qualifications to join the company and work on sales and marketing and whatever else they had planned for me. So that was my first job, and it was out in San Jose, California, which is how I came out to the San Francisco Bay Area. And it was interesting company. It was a Japanese family-owned company, but a large public company, a few thousand people, and they made semiconductor equipment. So it was like the equipment that would go into big semiconductor fabrication facilities. So like really, really high-end, sophisticated stuff, which I was even more out of my depth trying to understand in the beginning. But it is kind of what got me started in technology in the first place.
Yeah, so you moved to San Francisco like right away.
Right away, yeah. And it
How
was
did that feel?
yeah, there were a lot of people I remember at the time who really were trying to get out to San Francisco, trying to find some way to get
Oh,
from the East
really?
Coast to the West Coast, and I wasn't even trying. And I remember getting the job, and it's in San Jose, and like asking my brothers, like, where's San Jose? I don't know where that is. Like, well, that's in the San Francisco Bay Area. Oh, that's good. But that was after I accepted, by the way. So I've been living out here ever since. I'm super
hmm
happy about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, who would ever leave California? If you could elaborate a little bit on your current role now, and I guess maybe what led up to it.
Yeah, I mean, so my role, I'm chief product officer at a company called Reflektive, and I've been in product or product management roles now, most of my career. And so what that means for me today, so chief product officer, so we're about 150 person VC backed company. We sell to large enterprises, and we sell software that's used for managers and employees to have one-on-ones, to set goals, to have performance reviews. So it's kind of all around what they call performance management. And so for my role, it means I manage a team of product managers and a team of product designers and data analysts. So I can talk a little more about kind of what that means. But in short, the most simplest way to think about product management is that in a company that's developing software or hardware for that matter, but in our case, software, product managers are the team that defines what gets built by engineering and why, and is part of that whole process.
Yeah, totally. And I think, I don't know, some of our viewers might not be super familiar with product management in general. Just to demystify it a little bit, would you mind sharing like how much of your time is devoted to management of the people? If you, as an officer, still do like designing and analysis yourself. And I'm sure like it varies like by the company you've been to, but a little more color on that whole process would be great.
Yeah, and maybe I'll answer a little bit to say what is a product manager on my team do in terms of their split, and then it's a little different for me in my role, but something relatively similar. I kind of think about product management. So given your mission, you build software, you sell software to big companies. Someone needs to say what software are you building. That's what product management does. But how you get there, I sort of think of it as three things you do: you listen, you think, you execute. And the listening part of it is really around researching, talking to customers, talking to stakeholders, looking at your competition, trying to really gather as much information as you can to understand what's going on, what's needed, where should it go next. The thinking part is taking all that and synthesizing it. So given all of that, how do you come up with strategy? What's the direction? Where do you want to be in a year or two? And how do you think about the problems you're trying to solve within the space you're in, right? You're solving, managers have this challenge, they want to do X, Y, Z. How do you provide software that allows them to do X, Y, Z? So then you have to problem solve. How would you do that? Write specifications, that get down to the instructions that engineering should build. That's all kind of the thinking piece. Execution is actually working with engineering to build it, working with the rest of the organization to roll it out to your customers. I would say for a typical product manager, it's probably 25, maybe a third of your time listening. Let's say 25% of your time listening, 25% of your time thinking, 50% of your time executing. Right. There's a
Okay.
lot of the actual execution part behind it all. For me, there's a whole another element, which is management, like people management. So
Mhm.
I do a little less of the execution part
Right.
for sure. Definitely do listening and thinking part just as much as a product manager. I'm trying to talk to customers all the time. And then there's a whole element of managing, leading the team. That's, probably a quarter of my time.
Got it. And I'm guessing like the way it's organized is also just very much like bulk of it is the listening and thinking, and then you have a bit to execute. Like, how does that look proportionally?
Yeah, I think it's sort of like if you think about it more sequentially, might be a way to think. So you're a product manager, you own some part of the product. Let's say you own 1/4 of whatever this big product is
Mhm.
that you sell, and it has a particular stakeholder, somebody who does things with this product. They've got some problems they're trying to solve with this product. And so as you kind of go into it, you would say, okay, I'm going to spend time with customers using this product. Like what doesn't it do today, right? What could it do more? How can we improve it? So you're kind of hearing that part. Once you hear that, then you're starting to think, okay, what can I do with this information? What might we do that makes sense for us to create a new feature, a new capability, something that would really delight our customers? Decide why you should do it, make the case for it, write down with engineering, in some documentation form, like here's what I think it should be built, work with the designers for the user experience, what it should look like. And then you actually have to be sitting, usually on a weekly basis with engineers and back and forth as they build it and share things and give feedback. So that's why execution is a big part of it. It's like there is a lot of, like it is it's a manufacturing process, if you will, with software. Like you have to then, at the point you're interacting with engineering, particularly later in the process, like there's a lot of interaction you have to make sure you end up with something really great at the end.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And I guess just unique to yourself is that you've played a lot of the product management role, but across many different places. What has always stimulated you to kind of keep on looking out for new roles? And I know a lot of people will say when you stop learning, but like, how
Yeah.
do you define that? And I guess I don't know, like, what do you see differentiating you from other people when other people kind of just sit at one company and don't really move?
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, there's a lot in there. You're almost asking like, how do I define, what I want to do and why I work, right? But it's sort of you get through it. It takes you a few jobs, I think, to realize like what's important to you. And it might change across your lifetime. So, for me, for some people, the stability, being able to become really, really, really deep in one area, whether that's, the knowledge of everything happening within a company, the people, the processes, the technology. You stay at one company, you get really deep. I mean, you're there 10 years, the new people come in and you know everything, right? So that's never really been a big motivator for me. For me, it's the opposite, which is I kind of get antsy after a couple years of feeling like, okay, I've gotten to a certain level of expertise in this industry or this product in this company, and I want to go through that learning curve again. Where you go in and you kind of don't know anything, and having done it a few times, I have the trust that I can do it. I won't fail. I will learn. I will go up that learning curve. And when I start feeling a plateau, like it probably is one of the two or three things that motivates me. And if you look at, like, for me, the what have I kind of done, right? You reference all the things I've done. It's kind of crazy when you look back on it, and people maybe look at my background and say, why did you change so much? So I've been product person for 20 years. I'm on my 7th company. Not so crazy as an average, I suppose, but it's still a lot of companies. I've done B2C companies, selling to consumers, B2B companies, big companies that are a few thousand people, small companies that are 50
Mhm.
people, 4-year-old companies, 25-year-old companies, VC backed, private equity backed, fintech, e-commerce. That's like, so I look back on that, but every single one, it was like, that first 6 months was so exciting. right? Going into ed tech, I mean, I knew so much less than I thought. I was like, I've been a student before. How much could there be? What's so hard about ed tech? I was 12 years, in K through 12. It's another world. And what motivates people, the technologies, the pedagogy. I mean, just so much I had to learn. And for me, that's always been tremendously fun. And I think at the moment I stop feeling that in a job and I feel like it's plateauing is usually where I'm like, I'm ready to do something different, where healthcare, or I don't know, something else, that I've never really tried before. So that's what motivates me, at least.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and I guess just speaking on the differences and all the learning curves all over again, how are you really able to pivot from, like, for example, like your pivot from e-commerce to fintech and then to sales as a service? Do you think it was an organic kind of transition, or did you devote like extra time? I mean, I've heard of people just like staying back and really trying to understand more. I guess what was your experience like?
Yeah, I mean, um, I think a couple things happen, right? One is you get a little bit of confidence, right? This is something I think Williams graduates tend to have some confidence in their ability to learn, right? And
Hopefully.
yeah, hopefully, right? And so maybe you got better at it after you graduated than you were when you were there as a student, but it is sort of like that skill set, right? The ability to get something and learn through it. And so I think part of it is like having done it a few times, like I know I can do it. As I go in each company, there is a pattern to it, right? That's the other thing I've sort of learned is it's not completely or abstract when you go into a company. Like I actually think through when I like, what's my first 90 days going to be like? And I've kind of figured, okay, the first 90 days in a role, a lot of it is about learning, but it's learning of certain types in certain ways. And so that's a little bit of what I've learned having done it a few times. Like there is a pattern to how I want to learn, whatever it is that is an industry. So it's less about that I say study. Like I don't study a lot before these industries, but I do have a pattern of what I want to learn once I start. And some of it is reading up on stuff. A lot of it is spending time with certain people. It's like certain things I know I need to learn, like the market space, the product, the processes in a company, the context and history of what led a company to be a certain place and makes people behave a certain way. Like there's a set of things I know work. And if I can just sort of set myself and focus on it for the first 90 days, like whatever industry it is, I feel like I can learn enough to be, reasonably effective.
Okay, that's great. And I guess I'm wondering how much you think about product management as an entry level role right outside of Williams. Like, especially when you say like you've established a pattern and that's what really has made you more successful in your role. What do you suggest for kids? And would you suggest as product management as an entry level?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I didn't think it was not my first job. My first job
Right.
was work semiconductor equipment. I worked in Tokyo for a while. Like I was not on, like I really did not learn about software product management my first 7 years, but I learned about business and, so there, I learned, I went to business school. I went to COS for, Berkeley for 2 years. And my first job out of business school was where I started becoming a product manager. And so looking back for me, like I was really ready for it because product management is so much the center of so many other parts of the business, right? Engineering intersecting with marketing, intersecting with sales. So at least I had enough familiarity at that point in my career where I understood enough about business, where I just had to learn product management. And so that was an advantage for me. I can say like for me, running teams, I've never hired product managers right out of school, right out of undergrad. It's not that they can't be successful by any means. It's more just that I've tended to say, typically I want someone who's done it for a couple of years, has gotten through that first really hard learning curve of, first experience, first contact with a new role. And I'd rather someone else have, they've done it somewhere else, so I don't have to go through that. But so I have a little bit of bias that way. But I think in the right situation, I think it can be something that you can do right out of school. And by right situation, I think you want to be in a place where it does product management well. And that's hard to judge. Like not all technology companies do product management well. Like many are more engineering led, or they're more sales led, they're marketing led. There's people who have that title, but they may not really be leading and driving processes. And that's not where you want to learn. You want to learn at a place that does it really well. So if you can find a place that does it really well, that's big enough where they bring in entry level people, where they have some sense of mentorship of, experienced people who can help guide you through it. Like absolutely, I think, you can go through that process and learn that way and be effective and make a great career out of it. But I think you got to find that right first job, right? And if not, then it just might be a slower learning process, or you might learn the wrong lessons about product management, which is, can be just as damaging as you get to your next job, right? Because you think you kind
Mhm.
of know this is what it looks like, and you go another place and they think that's not what good product management looks like.
Yeah. And I think following that, for people who are curious, I am definitely curious. When you are sitting on the hiring side and you do see someone with the experience, I think, what other characteristics are you really looking for? I'm sure like teamwork is definitely one big deal, communication, but what are things that you found to be a big highlight on someone's interview process or resume?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so resume, resume I look for experience, but in this case, so there wouldn't be experience. What I would look for in an interview, would be kind of the core skills that make really good product managers, right? And I think there's a few things. One is problem solving and smarts. Like that's one you can tell in an interview. Like, is someone just really, are they a really quick learner? Are they a really good problem solver? It doesn't have to be software problem solving, but just anything, right? Because that's a core skill that you kind of have it or you don't. And if you have it, you can become a good product person. That's one thing. Absolutely, communication skills, and not just declarative communication, but sort of influential. Like, and you can again tell that in an interview, is someone thoughtful? Are they are they communicating to just share facts, or are they trying to create an outcome or an action or an opinion or an influence? Right? Really good communicators are thinking ahead and able to do that. And product managers, that's super critical. Like, it's like you don't own anything in product management. You don't do anything in a sense. You don't build the software. You don't sell it. You don't explain it. But you have an enormous amount of influence everywhere on all that. And so that's why the communication is such a big part. I think curiosity, someone who's shown that they're interested, that they learn fast, that they're willing to go into detail. And I think also with software, willingness to get into technical details matters. You have to want to do that, right? You have to want to learn. Like, when someone says, oh, we have to build, I don't know, something that doesn't sound very sexy, right? Permissions, like deciding who's allowed to see what thing on what page, right? It doesn't sound very interesting. But you need to say, okay, if I have to figure that out, like, I got to really learn, like, what are the technical limitations? How is this built? Like, when engineers, I talk to engineers, they're going to tell me things. How do I communicate with them so I understand when they're giving me options, what the implications are, right? So you have to be willing to get into the how it's built part enough. Doesn't mean you need to be a software engineer, but you have to care enough to learn it. And I think if you kind of have some of those, you're a good communicator, good problem solver, curious to learn, willing to get into details, including technical, everything else can come. Then it's experience at that point.
Got it. Okay. Very cool to learn. And I think, just speaking for Williams students, what would you think are the Williams like background education advantage as well as disadvantage? I mean, I think there are schools where you can, major in product or major in like business development, which is relatively similar to like
Right.
what you did a background on. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously biased. Like, I hire Williams people in a second, right? As I have a huge bias toward what, the type of people that choose to go to Williams, what
Mhm.
experience it does.
Just keep that bias.
Yeah, I know, and I will, and I feel badly. I'm in California. I haven't hired nearly as many Williams people as I would have liked, but um, I think some things that I expect to see in a Williams person often do. I think one, it is a lot of those base skill sets, right? I think it is that sense of fast learners, smart, motivated, good communicators. I think that kind of broad set of skills that, even if it's not a business experience maybe yet, those are things that really tend to serve people pretty well as they the speed of growth that they have. So I do think that's really really key thing for me. I actually don't think the background. Look, if you have some technical, like if you take some software courses and coding courses of CS, like obviously that's great, right? That's not that you need to code as a product person, but obviously that helps a lot. I actually don't think the business stuff matters. You'll learn it. I think if you take, if you want to be an accountant when you come out of school, you got to learn how to do accountancy, and then you're going to get that as your first job. But if you want to be a product person, you're not going to, even if you took classes undergrad, you're not going to understand what it means outside the context. Like, it's going to be very academic. You got to do it. You got to experience it. You got to go through it. So I don't think that's a disadvantage at all. Um, yeah, having a little bit of technical background or math or something that shows you can understand the technology is a plus, but it's not the only way to show that. You can learn that stuff and do it. Heck, I didn't take any coding classes. I was an Asian studies major. I was an Asian studies major. My first job was, talking to, PhDs in material science about building semiconductor wafers, right? It's like, if you can pull something like that off, any of us can learn anything, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess last question, what would be, I guess, any advice you might have for William students who are interested in pursuing a career in product, be it like designer or management
Mm-hmm.
or something like yours eventually. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, advice on it. I think, I think a couple paths to go on it. One is if you want to become a product manager, your first job out of school doesn't have to be product management. Like that's not like that's a required path. If you do any, if you do marketing, anything you do in business which kind of has experience, especially in a technology company, is going to already start preparing you to be a product manager.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't stress too much that your first job has to be a product management job in order to become a product manager. Uh, if you do get that job or want to do it as a first job, I would certainly, my advice would be, pick carefully. Like it's better to be at a really good company and learn marketing really well and then move to product management than, be a really junior first time product manager, do it for a couple of years, but not necessarily get the broader experience you want. Like that, you're probably better off in option one than option two.
That's interesting.
Uh, yeah, I think it's because all those general business experience, it's so important to be a great product manager. Like you have to understand how sales sells, how marketing markets, how engineering builds stuff, how companies grow, right? Those things all matter to how you develop strategy and how you think about product. And any way you can learn those, even if it's not being a product manager, it still helps you be a better product manager over time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time
Yeah,
today.
absolutely. I hope it's helpful. It's great to talk to you again, Victoria. I hope this is useful information or at least food for thought.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I'm gonna ask Mark on how the virus, I mean, we're all working from home. I'm not working, but yes, people are working from home. How has that impacted working in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, I sort of described it when we were talking before. It's a little bit of an experiment for that every company in the world is having to go through right now. So you don't have any choice. So I think we're learning a lot about working from home. Certain people already know they have a good place to work and can focus. Other people can't focus. Right? So you kind of have your personal side of what it means to work from home. But as a company, we're having to rethink kind of everything you do is how you communicate, how you manage people, how you think just because you have Slack and you have Zoom and you do work from home sometimes that it's the same, and it really isn't. Or part of it is, right? The tools are the same, but the way you use it is not, just because it's like every day, it's all day, and it's for the foreseeable future. So I think some of the things we're finding as leaders that we need to communicate a lot more. So we used to do like all hands once a month, have everybody come together in a physical place to talk about the business. We're doing like micro, like fireside chats, 30 minutes once a week. And not even necessarily a big agenda, but just getting everybody together, showing their video, share a few pieces of information, answer a bunch of questions. It's not even so much rich in content, but that getting people together and seeing each other becomes so important to the feeling of being at a company. Like more, just because normally you'd have it, right? You have it all around you in the
Yeah, that's
office.
great.
Like you have nothing. People are just absolutely isolated, and so they really need it. And I think also, we're trying to figure out, like, one of the things that's like in one sense you're really efficient, right? You don't have a 2-hour commute every day. In other sense, you're really inefficient because those 5-minute conversations you might have become something that starts getting scheduled. Like, well, let me schedule on your calendar, which means it becomes a 30-minute meeting, and you feel like you really want to talk for 30 minutes, and suddenly you're in meetings all day. So that part we're still figuring out. Like, how do you
You
kind of
ever
have
get like
micro
meeting
conversations?
fatigue?
Yes. Yeah, because of it, it's like not only do you have meetings, and you're also sitting in one place, so people just, the
Yeah.
whole energy. So like things we've done that are kind of silly, like you're trying to liven things up so people get some energy and motivation from sitting in a place looking at a screen all day. And so like last week we had a meeting with everybody and everybody had to wear a silly hat. And it's like stupid stuff like that that somehow manages to work and people were really into it and they were energized and they were excited by it. Where you wouldn't do that in the office. Like we wouldn't have people wear a silly hat at an all hands. Like you don't need to. It's distracting. So we're still figuring it out. And I think, we're, as companies figure this out over the next 6 weeks, whatever, some things we figure out will probably become lessons we learn about how we work in the future. Right? I think it's going to change how we work forever. And we don't know yet all the ways it's going to be, but I think it's going to have permanent impact.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have anything that you think you will implement in the future when we do work all together in one place again?
I think one is the having a bit more mix of time in the office and time out of the office. I think it's maybe more healthy than some people might think. Right? In
To
other
have
words,
more
there's,
time out?
yeah, just the chance to like, I think like for my company, there's a bias toward being in the office. And yes, if something's going on, you work from home. But I think the sense of like maybe there is a rhythm that actually is more efficient for teams and companies where you have more prescribed time at home, where you have certain kinds of days and certain focus versus times you're in the office, and having actually everybody, even say old school managers who don't like that, start accepting that, yeah, maybe this actually kind of works, or maybe even accepting more remote workers, more than maybe we have even before. How to use some of the technology, right? How to have really good remote brainstorming, which sometimes you just got to do. I think there's a few of these kind of techniques and tricks that we're going to find we use moving forward.
Okay, awesome. Okay, great. That's a wrap then. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. All right. Thanks, Victoria. Bye-bye.